One quick thing before we start. The voices you're about to hear are AI generated. I want to be upfront about that, but everything behind it is still me. Every piece of research, every source, every psychological idea in this episode was chosen and put together by me. So the voice isn't mine, but the thinking and intention behind it is. Okay, let's get into it.
So, you are sitting on the bathroom floor,
Yeah.
and the tiles are just, they're cold against the back of your legs. Maybe you can sort of feel the pattern of the grout right under your fingertips. But I mean, you barely even register the temperature or the texture.
Because the roaring in your ears is just way too loud.
Exactly. It's so loud. Your chest feels unbearably tight, like there are these iron bands just wrapped completely around your ribs,
Yeah.
and your breath is shallow.
Really shallow.
Right. And your hands might be shaking, or maybe it's just your whole body trembling.
Yeah.
And, the trigger for all of this, the specific thing that just sent you spiraling into this visceral, suffocating wave of panic or grief or just absolute terror.
It was incredibly small.
It was so small. I mean, a canceled plan for a Tuesday night,
Yeah.
a one-word text reply from someone you really care about, or maybe just a perceived slight in a passing conversation, like a shift in someone's tone of voice, or a look that just lasted a half second too long.
Right. To anyone else, to the rest of the world, it would literally be a blip on the radar. Just dust motes in the sun.
But for you, the wave just hit. And it hit too hard, and it hit entirely too fast. You didn't even have time to put your hands up to brace for it. You were just drowning in it.
And then, eventually the wave recedes.
It always does.
Right. And then comes the morning after. The physical shaking has stopped. The tears have sort of dried. But the panic is replaced by something almost heavier.
Oh, yeah.
It's something that just settles right into your bones, this crushing, suffocating shame. You wake up, and the sun is shining, and the rational part of your brain finally kicks back online. And you look at your phone, you look at that text message.
You just tell yourself, I am overreacting.
Yes.
You say, I am unstable. I am too much. Why can't I just be normal? Why is every single thing so hard for me?
I want to just take a breath here. We really need to let that confusion and that deep, agonizing self-judgment just breathe for a second in the silence.
Yeah, we do. Because look, if you have ever been on that bathroom floor holding your knees, staring at the wall, just wondering what is fundamentally broken inside of you, well, we have been there too.
We really have.
You are not alone. And we are here today to talk directly to you. We are doing a deep dive into the agonizing shame, the profound isolation, and just the deep confusion of these disproportionate emotional reactions.
And we've pulled from a really deep stack of source material today. I mean, we are looking at clinical research on complex PTSD. We're looking at the neurobiological frameworks developed by trauma experts like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk.
Right.
We are unpacking these cutting-edge predictive coding inference models of trauma. But most importantly, we are drawing from profoundly honest, lived experience accounts from survivor communities, real people who are just trying to navigate this reality.
But I want to be clear, this isn't a medical lecture. We aren't here to diagnose you or talk down to you from some clinical pedestal.
Yeah.
The mission of this deep dive is to prove one core truth to you. And if you hear nothing else we say today, please hear this.
Yeah.
You are not overreacting to what just happened. You are reacting to everything that has ever felt like this. Your body remembered long after your conscious mind forgot.
That is the foundation of everything we're going to talk about today, because society operates on this very simplistic, almost robotic mathematical assumption when it comes to human emotions.
The equation is supposed to be simple.
Right. A small event should equal a small feeling. A big event equals a big feeling. 2 + 2 = 4. So when a dry 3-word text message produces this profound, world-ending sense of grief in you, well, the math doesn't work.
It doesn't add up.
The outside world looks at the equation and says, well, that doesn't make sense. And when the math doesn't work, society really loves to label you.
And honestly, worse than society labeling you,
Yeah.
your own mind labels you. You start calling yourself dramatic or irrational or broken. You internalize that bad math and you just assume you are the faulty variable. But those labels are built on a complete, fundamental misunderstanding of how the human nervous system actually operates. To really understand this, we have to start by naming the experience honestly. Because the clinical terms, like hyperarousal or dysregulation, they're just too sterile. They don't capture the loneliness of it.
You really don't.
In the source material, there are these incredibly vivid accounts from people who live with complex post-traumatic stress disorder or CPTSD. And they use these phenomenological metaphors to describe the feeling. And I want to walk through a few of these because I think they make you feel so completely seen.
One of the most striking metaphors someone shared was describing this feeling as being a fish in a dirty tank.
Go that one. Yeah.
Imagine you are trapped in this small, cramped, enclosed tank, and it is just filled with this thick, green, scummy water. Every time you pull water through your gills to breathe, it physically hurts. It's toxic. You are suffocating slowly.
Yeah.
But here is the cruelest part. Your dirty little tank is sitting right in the middle of a beautiful, vast, vibrant ocean reef.
And you can see the other fish. You're watching them. They are swimming freely, darting through the coral, just breathing easily in this crystal blue water. And the hardest part, the absolute most isolating part, is that the glass of your tank is completely invisible to them.
Right, they literally can't see the barrier.
They can't see the scum. So they swim right up to the invisible glass. They look at you struggling, and they say, well, just swim away. What are you doing? Just get over it. The water out here is fine. And you are looking back at them, choking on a liquid poison that they literally cannot perceive.
That invisible barrier is just the perfect representation of the disconnect. I mean, they are giving you advice for the ocean, but you are drowning in the tank.
Yeah.
And there's another metaphor from the archives that hits just as hard. Someone described their daily life as being the final girl at the end of a horror movie, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wow.
You know the trope. The lone survivor who has just lived through unspeakable horrors. You are covered in blood. You are deeply, profoundly shaken. Your nervous system is completely fried. But the blood is invisible.
Right.
And you aren't sitting in an ambulance wrapped in a shock blanket. You are standing in the cereal aisle at the grocery store. Or you are sitting in a Tuesday morning staff meeting. Or you were at a coffee shop with a friend, and you are just trying desperately to act normal.
You are carrying this immense, invisible weight of survival, and the person across from you is literally just talking about the weather.
Exactly.
Or there's the frozen lake metaphor. This one is so common for that sudden disproportionate trigger. You are walking along the ice. You think you're doing okay. It's been a pretty good week. And suddenly, with zero warning, a tiny crack opens up, and you fall entirely through the ice.
It's instantaneous.
The freezing water fills your lungs. The shock stops your heart. And when you are under that ice looking up at the surface, every single terrifying thought you have feels like the absolute undeniable truth. The thought that you are completely unlovable. The thought that everyone is going to leave you. Under the ice, that is the only reality.
You are drowning in it.
And the people on the surface are just walking by, sipping their coffee, completely unaware that you are fighting for your life 3 feet below them.
The isolation in all of those metaphors is just profound. And it creates this devastating, self-perpetuating cycle of shame. Because you know you are under the ice, and you know they are on the surface, and you blame yourself for falling in.
Okay, let's unpack this, because one of the most painful layers of this entire experience is the feeling that you are a massive burden to the people around you.
Yes.
There's another description from the Survivor Archives that really stuck with me. They described it like carrying a massive, incredibly heavy suitcase that you just don't know how to put down. You're dragging it everywhere, to work, to dates, to family dinners, and everyone around you is staring at you, annoyed, wondering, well, why is she still holding that? It's been years. Why won't she just put the bag down and be happy?
Right.
But what they don't understand, and what society constantly gets wrong about trauma, is that you are not holding on to this pain by choice. You aren't choosing to drive the suitcase. Your mind, your conscious self would love nothing more than to drop it and walk away. But it is your body that refuses to let go. Your hands are just locked around the handle.
What's fascinating here, and I don't mean that in a light way, I mean in a really tragic way, is the way this dynamic plays into a very specific, deeply harmful social double bind.
Right.
The research outlines this victim-blaming environment that complex trauma survivors often find themselves in. Society, and even really well-meaning friends, criticize you for the reaction. They point their disapproval at your disproportionate response rather than looking at the environment, the trigger, or the history that actually created that response.
They see you crying over a text message and they judge the tears.
Exactly. This double bind makes you feel like your intense reaction is a character flaw. It makes you feel like you just lack the willpower to be calm. Like if I was just stronger, if I was just more mature, I wouldn't react this way. But the science we are looking at today is incredibly, undeniably clear on this point. This is not an issue of willpower. You cannot willpower your way out of this. It is an issue of neurobiology.
Right. And this is where we really have to shift from the feeling to the mechanics. Because the math of small event equals small emotion assumes that your brain is processing the canceled plan or the dry text in a total vacuum.
Right.
It assumes your brain is a blank slate every single morning. But that is fundamentally not how human memory works. To understand why the reaction feels so incredibly big and so completely disconnected from the present moment, we have to look at the actual neurobiological architecture of memory. We have to look under the hood.
We do.
The sources break down two distinct memory systems in the brain that operate completely independently of each other.
Yes, this is a crucial distinction. The first system is explicit memory. This is also called declarative memory. It's your conscious recall. It is the autobiographical narrative of your life. It stores facts, dates, and stories. Explicit memory is governed primarily by the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, rational, thinking part of your brain right behind your forehead, and the hippocampus, which acts like a librarian.
The librarian.
Yes, the hippocampus organizes memories and files them away with a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. Explicit memory is the part of you that knows Paris is the capital of France, or remembers the exact date of your best friend's birthday, or can tell the story of what you had for breakfast yesterday.
Okay, so to put that in the context of our bathroom floor moment,
Right.
when your friend texts you to cancel your plans, your explicit memory is the rational voice in your head that says, okay, she texted that she's stuck at work. I know she works at an accounting firm. I know it's tax season. She's just busy today. It has nothing to do with me. It's not a big deal.
Exactly. That is the prefrontal cortex doing its job. It is assessing the facts. But there is a second system, and this is where everything changes.
Yeah.
This is implicit memory. Implicit memory is procedural. It is completely unconscious. It is governed by deeper, much older, more primitive brain structures, primarily the amygdala, which is your brain's smoke detector, its alarm system, and the basal ganglia.
Okay.
Implicit memory does not store narratives. It stores skills, habits, emotional learning, and sensory fragments. It is not about knowing that a fact is true. It is about knowing how to survive. Like when you learn to ride a bike, you don't use explicit memory to calculate the physics of balance every time you pedal. Your implicit memory just knows how it feels to balance.
Wait, I need to pause you there to make sure this is totally clear. Because we think of memories as little movie clips in our head. But what you're saying is that implicit memory isn't a movie clip. It's a physical sensation or an emotional reflex that happens without us even thinking about it.
That is exactly it. Implicit memory is a reflex. It is a bodily sensation. And this is where the trauma lives. The clinical sources explain that when an overwhelming traumatic event occurs, and we need to be incredibly clear here because this is so validating,
Yes, please.
we are not just talking about physical violence or war zones. We are talking about severe emotional neglect. We are talking about a childhood where love was conditional. We are talking about constant, chronic unpredictability in your home.
Right.
When that kind of overwhelm occurs, the brain's architecture physically shifts in real time.
It actually changes how your brain operates in that moment.
Yes. The prefrontal cortex, your rational executive, your logical narrator, it detects the overwhelming threat and it literally goes offline. It shuts down. Blood flow shifts away from it. The brain decides, we don't have time to write a story about this. We just need to survive.
Wow.
And incredibly, neuroimaging shows that Broca's area, the specific part of the brain responsible for formulating speech and language, also shows significantly reduced activity during trauma. It literally goes dark.
That is just staggering to think about. Your language center just shuts off, which explains so much. I mean, this is why trauma is so often described in the literature as speechless terror.
Yeah.
It's why when you are sitting on the bathroom floor and someone asks, what's wrong? Why are you crying? You literally cannot find the words. It's not that you are being stubborn. The part of your brain that creates words is fundamentally not receiving power.
Precisely. Because the thinking, talking, organizing parts of the brain are offline, the traumatic event, the emotional neglect, the abandonment is not stored as a cohesive story. It doesn't get a timestamp.
Right.
The librarian, the hippocampus, doesn't get to file it away in the things that happened in 2014 drawer. Instead, the experience bypasses the language centers entirely and imprints directly onto your body through the implicit memory system. It gets shattered and fragmented into raw sensory pieces.
Sensory pieces. Let's really paint a picture of what that means. It means the memory isn't a story. The memory is the specific sharp tone of a caregiver's voice. The memory is the sound of a door shutting too hard down the hallway. It's the micro-expression of a tightening jaw on your partner's face. Or it's just the deep, visceral, suffocating sensation in your chest of being entirely trapped and utterly unseen by the people who are supposed to protect you. That feeling is the memory.
Yes. And because implicit memory bypasses the librarian, because it has no timestamp, it has absolutely no concept of linear time, to your explicit memory, 2014 is a decade ago. But to your implicit memory, everything it holds is happening right now. It is in an eternal present tense.
Oh, wow.
So let's go back to the catalyst.
Yeah.
The canceled plan, the dry text message. Your explicit memory looks at the text and says, well, she's just busy today. But your implicit memory is scanning that text, scanning the lack of emojis, scanning the delayed response time, and it recognizes a sensory fragment.
Right.
It recognizes the feeling of being dismissed, the sudden drop in your stomach, the sensation of impending isolation.
It matches the feeling of today's small trigger to a deep, agonizing, unhealed wound from your past. And because there is no timestamp on that old wound, your body doesn't think, oh, wow, this text message kind of reminds me of that terrible time I was abandoned when I was 12.
No.
No. Your body genuinely, physiologically believes the original threat, the original devastating abandonment is happening right now in your living room on a Tuesday.
The body cannot tell the difference between the original devastating threat and the present day. Minor reminder. To the amygdala, they are identical. And so your nervous system is plunged instantaneously back into full survival mode.
Right.
Your amygdala hits the panic button, flooding your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline, preparing your body to fight, to flee, or to freeze. And it does all of this entirely bypassing your rational mind. You are reacting to a historical ghost, but the physiological response is entirely real.
There is a concept in the research that shifted everything for me when I read it. Here is where the research gets really deep. There's a theory developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, who created the polyvagal theory. And the concept is called neuroception. I want to take a minute to really explain this because it completely changes how you view yourself.
It really does.
Neuroception is your nervous system's continuous, unconscious, automatic scanning of your environment for cues of safety or cues of danger. It is happening right now as you listen to this. It is evaluating facial expressions, vocal tones, body posture, the rhythm of a text message, the space between footsteps. Everything.
Everything.
And it is running this pattern match calculation much, much faster than your conscious brain can even formulate a single thought.
It is entirely preconscious. Before you have even consciously registered the actual English words in the text message, before you have read the words, I can't make it, your nervous system has already evaluated the tone, the timing, the context. It has matched that context to a historical threat in its database, and it has already dispatched a full-body survival response.
But wait, if we think about this logically, and I know we just said logic goes out the window, but why would our brains evolve to do this? I mean, it's incredibly disruptive to have a panic attack over a canceled dinner. Why doesn't the brain just wait 2 seconds for the cortex to analyze the situation and realize it's just a text?
Explain the evolutionary logic there, because honestly, it feels like a glitch.
It feels like a glitch, but it is actually a brilliantly designed survival feature. Neuroception is designed, first and foremost, to keep you alive in a dangerous world. Let's use an evolutionary analogy. If you are walking in the wild, in the high grass, and out of the corner of your eye you see a long, curved shape, your neuroception kicks in.
Right.
It is much, much safer for your brain to instantly assume that shape is a venomous snake and flood your body with adrenaline so you jump back automatically than to assume it's just a stick, wait for your prefrontal cortex to analyze it, and risk getting bitten and dying.
So the nervous system actively favors false positives. It wants to be wrong about danger rather than wrong about safety. Exactly. A false positive, jumping away from a stick, costs you a little bit of energy and maybe you look silly. A false negative, ignoring a snake because you think it's a stick, costs you your life.
Wow.
Your nervous system applies this exact same logic to emotional survival. If you grew up in an environment where emotional abandonment meant you were fundamentally unsafe, your nervous system will favor false positives forever.
Right.
It would rather you have an exhausting, agonizing panic attack over a canceled dinner plan than leave you vulnerable and unprepared for the devastating abandonment it remembers from your past. It is deploying a preemptive strike. It is, in its own primitive, exhausting way, trying to protect you.
It is trying to protect you. That is such a vital perspective-shifting reframing. The reaction on the bathroom floor isn't a malfunction. You aren't broken. It is a highly calibrated, hypersensitive protection mechanism based on historical data.
Yes.
This brings us to the famous clinical axiom, the one that broke into the mainstream a few years ago by Bessel van der Kolk. The body keeps the score. It's the idea that trauma isn't just a psychological issue. It is physically inscribed in the tissues, the muscles, and the viscera of your body.
Yes, the score is kept in the soma, the physical body. You see this in chronic somatic holding patterns.
Mm.
Think about how you are sitting right now. Are your shoulders creeping up toward your ears as if you are physically bracing for a blow?
Usually, yes.
That chronic tension in the jaw, the shallow chest breathing that never quite reaches your belly, the relentless gut issues. I mean, the gut and the brain share a powerful, direct superhighway via the vagus nerve, and the enteric nervous system, which is the network of neurons in your gastrointestinal tract, is incredibly acutely sensitive to emotional threat. When you feel that drop in your stomach, that is literal physical nervous system activation.
But the source material we're looking at today brings in a newer, even deeper layer to this concept of the body keeping the score. It's called the inference model, or predictive coding. And I really want to dive into this because it shifts the paradigm slightly from how we usually think about memory.
It does.
The old way of thinking was that the body acts like a passive filing cabinet, just storing old memories in a dark drawer waiting for a trigger to open them. But predictive coding says the brain and body don't wait. They act together as an active, continuous predictive engine. Because of your past pain, your brain has developed what computational neuroscientists call an overweighted prior for danger.
To translate overweighted prior into human terms, your brain has learned through repeated painful experiences that the world is generally unsafe and people are generally unreliable.
Right?
So instead of waiting to react to danger, it predicts danger before it even happens. It assigns excessive statistical confidence to the likelihood that you will be abandoned, rejected, or threatened. It expects the worst constantly.
Constantly anticipating the blow.
Yes. It predicts the emotional pain of abandonment. And because it predicts it, your amygdala starts preparing your body for it. It triggers the physical arousal, the racing heart, the tight chest, the shallow breathing.
Okay.
But here is the tragic, self-perpetuating loop of predictive coding. Your brain then notices your racing heart and tight chest. And instead of realizing, oh, I'm just anxious about a prediction, your brain circularly interprets that physical racing heart as absolute, undeniable proof that you are currently in active danger.
The prediction creates the physical feeling, and then the brain uses the physical feeling to validate the prediction.
Exactly. It's an echo chamber. The body says, my heart is racing, so there must be a predator in the room. The danger is real. It is a self-confirming loop of hypervigilance.
The body isn't just an archive of the past. It's a desperate messenger, constantly shouting that the past is happening right now. And as you can imagine, living inside that echo chamber is just exhausting.
It's so exhausting.
This chronic stress causes the autonomic nervous system to severely dysregulate. The sources we reviewed outline these archetypes. They call them the malfunctioning vehicle archetypes, to describe how this CPTSD dysregulation actually presents clinically. And rather than just listing them out, I want us to look at how someone might experience these, because it explains why our reactions can feel so incredibly chaotic and all over the map. One day you are crying, the next you are numb.
Right. It's not a single uniform reaction. Let's look at the first state, which they call the stalling car. Imagine you have been running that predictive danger loop for weeks. Your system is just depleted. The stalling car is when your nervous system simply fails to compensate for the chronic stress anymore.
The engine is out of gas.
Exactly. This presents as profound emotional overwhelm, deep, bone-weary fatigue, and a complete inability to sustain normal work or relationships. You just keep sputtering and cutting out. You sleep for 12 hours and wake up exhausted.
And then sometimes the system tries to jumpstart itself and you shift into the warning light dashboard. This is the active, screaming signaling of internal systems in conflict. This isn't exhaustion, this is sheer panic.
Yes.
You experience sudden, out-of-the-blue panic attacks in the grocery store. Wild mood swings where you are terrified one minute and deeply suspicious the next. Intrusive memories flashing in your mind. Every single psychological alarm bell is ringing at once, the dashboard is lit up red, and you can't put a piece of tape over the lights anymore.
And if that warning state escalates, you might experience the flooded engine. This happens when there is excessive emotional fuel being pumped into the system, but completely insufficient cognitive air to process it. The prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, is completely choked out by the emotion.
Wow.
This manifests as sudden, terrifying anger bursts, uncontrollable crying spells that last for hours, and deep impulsivity. You might send that incredibly destructive text message or quit your job on the spot because the engine is flooded and the pressure has to go somewhere.
But then there's the final defense. When the system is flooded, when the warning lights are flashing and the brain realizes that fighting or fleeing isn't going to work, the system pulls the ultimate emergency brake, the immobilized vehicle. The clinical term for this is the dorsal vagal freeze response.
Yes.
I want to stop here for a second. We hear the word freeze a lot, especially on social media.
Huh.
But what exactly is the dorsal vagal response? I don't think people know what that physically means inside the body.
It's a really important question. The vagus nerve is the main component of your parasympathetic nervous system, which usually rests and digests. But it has two branches. The ventral branch keeps you socially engaged and calm.
Okay.
The dorsal branch is the ancient primitive pathway. It's the reptile brain. When the threat is so overwhelming that your brain decides there is no escape, you can't fight, you can't run, the dorsal vagal complex activates total shutdown. It drastically lowers your heart rate, it drops your blood pressure, it releases endogenous opioids to numb physical and emotional pain.
It's plain dead.
It is literal biological collapse. Severe dissociation. A complete loss of agency. You feel entirely numb, hollow, detached from reality, like you are a ghost haunting your own life. You might sit on the couch staring at the wall for 4 hours, unable to move your limbs or speak a word. You are just frozen under the ice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how we actually live our lives, understanding these different states explains the incredibly confusing phenomenon of hybrid responses. I hear from so many women who feel deeply ashamed and confused because they don't just have one uniform trauma response. They say, I can't be traumatized. Look at how successful I am.
Right.
You might be this fierce, high-achieving, hyper-competent fighter at work. You handle corporate crises. You push through impossible deadlines. You are formidable. You are running on high sympathetic arousal, fight energy. But the second you walk to the front door of your apartment or the second a romantic partner raises their voice, even a fraction, you completely collapse.
You shift instantly into fawn, people-pleasing, making yourself small, or you go straight into that dorsal vagal freeze. You become blank and accommodating.
And the shame that comes with that whiplash is intense.
Oh, it's so intense.
You judge yourself so harshly. You think, I am a strong person. I manage a team of 20 people. Why am I acting so pathetic and weak right now? Because a guy didn't text me back.
Yeah.
But it's not weakness.
Yeah.
It is because your body is a master tactician. It deploys whatever survival strategy worked historically with that specific type of relationship or that specific context.
Exactly.
If fighting and overachieving kept you safe and visible in chaotic public environments, you will fight at work. But if freezing, disappearing, and becoming entirely invisible was the only way to survive an angry, unpredictable caregiver behind closed doors when you were 8 years old, your body will instantly freeze when a partner seems irritated. Your nervous system is pattern matching the specific environment and deploying the custom-built armor for that specific threat.
It is entirely context dependent. The survival pattern follows the history of the threat, not the reality of the present situation.
Which brings us to a reality that we really, really need to sit with. I want to slow down here. We've talked about the math of emotions. We've talked about the neurobiology, the memory systems, the predicting brain, the vagus nerve. We understand the mechanics. But we have to confront the heavy, cumulative emotional weight of all of this. The clinical term the sources use is allostatic load.
Allostatic load. It's a crucial concept. Allostasis is your body's process of maintaining stability through change, adapting to stress. But allostatic load is the physiological wear and tear of chronic stress. It is the cumulative heavy burden on your physical body and your organs from having your sympathetic alarm system constantly activated over years and decades.
And this is where we have to talk about little set traumas. Because so many people lying on that bathroom floor tell themselves a very specific lie to invalidate their own pain. They say, I wasn't in a war. I wasn't in a horrific car crash. I wasn't physically abused. I don't have the right to feel this traumatized. I'm just being dramatic. But the nervous system doesn't only keep score of the massive explosions. It keeps a ledger of the quiet erosion. It keeps a tally of 1,000 small moments where safety was withdrawn.
Paper cuts.
Exactly. The 1,000 paper cuts. Moments where you reached out for comfort as a child and were met with coldness or annoyance. Where your boundaries were casually, consistently ignored. Where you were made to feel, in subtle, unspoken ways, that your emotional needs were a burden to the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally.
And the nervous system doesn't calculate the severity of today's single paper cut in isolation. When that text message comes in or that dinner plan is canceled, your body doesn't just react to the text. It fires the full accumulated weight of the entire allostatic load. It fires the weight of every single time that pattern of neglect was confirmed in your life.
The canceled plan today didn't create the grief. It just found the door. It just unlocked the entire filing cabinet. So if we know this is true, if we know this disproportionate reaction belongs to the past, we have to ask the heaviest question. How far back does it actually go?
Yeah.
How far back?
This raises such an important, heartbreaking question. It brings us to the profound difference between shock trauma and developmental trauma.
Right.
Shock trauma is what we usually think of, a single, overwhelming, horrific event that happens to an otherwise stable nervous system. But developmental trauma, which is the shadow that so many CPTSD survivors carry, is entirely different. Developmental trauma is about an environment where safety was conditional or entirely absent
Yeah.
during the formative years when your brain was literally building its structural foundation.
So how far back does it go? Think about what that means for you right now, sitting in your apartment listening to this. It goes back to the very architecture of your developing brain. It goes back to the ledger your body started keeping before you even had the language to describe what was happening to you. Every time a caregiver didn't show up for you, a tally was made. Every time you had to make yourself incredibly small, quiet, and perfectly behaved just to be loved, a tally was made. Every time someone made you feel you weren't worth protecting, a physical imprint was left in your nervous system.
The reaction you are having today on the floor isn't just about the person who canceled on you. The person who canceled on you is just the proxy. The reaction is the echo of every time you were left alone in the dark. It is the accumulated, unexpressed grief of a child who learned very early on that the world is not a safe place and that people cannot be trusted to stay.
And we have to sit in the brutal, agonizing tension of that reality. Because understanding this neurobiology, knowing that your amygdala is hyperactive, knowing your prefrontal cortex is offline, knowing about the vagus nerve and the overweighted priors, it doesn't magically stop the reaction from happening in real time.
It doesn't.
So what does this all mean? This is the most frustrating part. If knowing the science doesn't fix the feeling, where does that leave you? You are still on the bathroom floor. Your heart is still racing. Your chest still hurts. The tears are still falling. There's this agonizing, seemingly unbridgeable gap between the cortex, the part of you that is listening to this right now, the part that is nodding along, the part that knows you are objectively safe in your home,
Right.
and the subcortex, the deep, ancient animal brain that is fighting for its absolute life. The knowledge, the science, lives in the cortex. But the trigger, the terror, the trauma, lives in the subcortex.
And this gap, this tension between knowing you are safe and feeling you are dying, is exactly why traditional talk therapy can sometimes feel so deeply frustrating and occasionally even harmful for complex trauma survivors.
Wait, really? Talk therapy can be harmful. That goes against everything we are taught about mental health.
Yeah.
We are told to go talk about it.
It does go against the mainstream narrative. But the clinical sources we're reviewing are very clear on the limitations of purely cognitive behavioral approaches for dump trauma. You cannot logic your way out of a physiological survival response.
It says it's not logical.
Exactly. Sitting in a comfortable chair in a therapist's office and rationally discussing why you shouldn't be afraid of abandonment doesn't communicate safety to the amygdala. The amygdala doesn't speak English. It speaks sensation. In fact, sometimes just talking about the trauma, retelling the story of the neglect over and over, can actually reinforce the mind's defenses. It can re-traumatize the system.
Because you are bringing up the terrifying explicit memories.
Yeah.
You are thinking about the pain, but you aren't giving the body a way to process the physical implicit activation.
Yeah.
So your heart races, your muscles tense up in the chair, your cortisol spikes, and you leave the therapist's office feeling completely raw and actually worse than when you went in.
Exactly. The body is still screaming, and the talking didn't soothe it.
Yeah.
And we also have to acknowledge another layer of tension here. The baseline physiological friction that makes this gap between knowing and feeling even harder to cross. The sources talk extensively about how your day-to-day physical state acts as a massive amplifier for the trauma response.
Right, the biological friction. It's not just in your head, it's in your physical maintenance.
Yeah.
If you were sleep deprived, for example, your prefrontal cortex, which we established is the brakes on your emotional engine, is physically impaired. It literally has less glucose to operate.
Right.
And sleep loss elevates a hormone called ghrelin. Now, we usually associate ghrelin with hunger. It's the hormone that makes your stomach rumble. But research shows it also heavily impacts the amygdala, increasing anxiety and stress reactivity.
It primes the alarm system to be even more sensitive. Or consider hormonal fluctuations. Drops in estrogen or progesterone during different phases of a menstrual cycle can severely disrupt serotonin and GABA regulation. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's the brain's natural calming agent. When GABA drops, your window of tolerance drastically shrinks.
Let's define the window of tolerance because it's such a helpful visual.
Your window of tolerance is the optimal zone of arousal where you can experience stress or difficult emotions without becoming completely dysregulated. Inside the window, you can handle a canceled plan and just feel mildly annoyed. But when you are exhausted, when your hormones are shifting, when your blood sugar is low, or your baseline vagal tone is weak, the top and bottom of that window close in. The window shrinks to a tiny sliver.
So the canceled plan hits you when your window of tolerance is already microscopic. The body's physical state removes whatever tiny, fragile buffer your rational brain had left. You are fighting a war on two completely different fronts: the heavy historical trauma stored in your implicit memory and the acute biological friction of your current physical state. I want to emphasize this because we are not offering cheap reassurance here. This is brutally, exhaustingly hard.
It is hard. It is a full-time job managing a nervous system like this. But recognizing that difficulty, naming it, and understanding the mechanics of the friction, that is the first step toward true resolution. Because the goal isn't what society tells you the goal should be. The goal isn't to magically rewire your brain overnight so you never, ever feel this reaction again. The goal isn't to become a perfectly stoic, unfeeling robot.
No, the goal is much softer than that. And honestly, it's much more attainable. The resolution doesn't happen by preventing the wave. It happens in the tiny microscopic moment just before the disproportionate reaction completely takes over.
Yes. The shift doesn't come from suppressing the feeling. It certainly doesn't come from forcing yourself to practice toxic positivity and chanting good vibes only while your body feels like it's dying. It comes from what the literature calls bottom-up healing.
Bottom-up healing, meaning starting with the body, the bottom, and moving up to the brain rather than starting with thoughts, top-down, to control the body. The sources mention specific modalities for this, things like somatic experiencing, EMDR, finding deep flow states. Tell me how these actually work neurobiologically, because they can sound a bit woo-woo to someone who hasn't tried them.
They can sound esoteric, but the science is incredibly grounded. These modalities work precisely because they bypass the language centers. They don't rely on Broca's area. Somatic experiencing, for example, focuses on tracking physical sensations. Where is the heat in your chest? Where is the tension in your jaw? And slowly discharging that trapped fight-or-flight energy through tiny, manageable physical movements. EMDR uses bilateral stimulation, like following a light side to side with your eyes, to keep the prefrontal cortex anchored in the present moment while the subcortex processes the fragmented implicit memory. These methods speak the subcortex's language. They slowly restore metastability, which is the brain's ability to fluidly move through different emotional states, from arousal back to calm, without getting stuck in the extreme ends of the spectrum.
They teach the nervous system that it is safe to come back down. But on a practical moment-to-moment level, when you don't have a therapist in the room with you, the shift comes in a tiny spark of recognition. There is a case study in the sources that I think perfectly, beautifully illustrates this. I want to slow down and really look at this story.
It's a powerful one.
It's about a young woman, a graduate student, who had a history of complex developmental trauma. She was sitting in her living room, perfectly safe, watching television. On the screen, a movie was playing, and the actress Angelina Jolie let out this sound of horrific, agonizing wailing. Just absolute grief. The student heard this sound through the TV speakers, and her body instantly, violently went into a full physiological cascade.
A massive trigger. Trembling, sweating, heavy, panic breathing, and then sudden immobility. The dorsal vagal freeze was initiating.
And the crucial part of this story is what happened next. Because of the work she had been doing, the student realized almost immediately that it was just a movie. Her explicit memory, her prefrontal cortex knew she was safe in her apartment. She knew she was watching a DVD, but her body didn't stop reacting. The cascade continued. The trembling didn't stop just because she knew it was a movie.
The gap we talked about. The cortex knew she was safe. The subcortex was fighting for survival.
Exactly. But here's the profound shift. Instead of fighting the body, instead of getting angry at herself, instead of saying, "Stop it, you're being ridiculous, it's just a movie, get a grip," which is what most of us do, she had a moment of profound clarity. She recognized that her body wasn't malfunctioning. It was releasing old, indescribable, trapped grief from years of past traumas that had been locked in her implicit memory. The sound of the TV was just the key that unlocked the ledger. So she entered into a quiet, interactive dialogue with her body.
An interactive dialogue, not a lecture from the mind to the body, but a dialogue.
Yes, she didn't try to stop the trembling. She let the shaking happen. She honored the energy that needed to move. But while she let it happen, she actively used sensory grounding to gently signal to her nervous system that she was safe in the present. She got up, still trembling, and took a scalding hot shower. The intense physical sensation of the hot water provided a grounding anchor for her nervous system, a stark reminder of the present physical reality, while the old emotional wave washed over her and eventually naturally passed.
She recognized, I've felt this before. She didn't have to trace it back to the exact origin. She didn't need to pinpoint exactly which childhood event the wailing reminded her of. She just had to acknowledge that the feeling was familiar, it belonged to the past. And because it had passed before, it would pass again.
I love that so much. You do not have to choose between validating the emotion and understanding it has a history. Both things are true at the exact same time. The feeling of terror or the profound grief over a canceled plan is completely real. You are really feeling it. The threat your body is measuring just isn't entirely present right now.
Yeah.
The information your nervous system is giving you is genuine. It's just not entirely about today. And when you realize that, when you stop fighting the math of your own emotions, something incredibly beautiful softens inside of you.
The war ends.
Yes. You stop viewing your body as a broken, defective machine that is constantly betraying you and embarrassing you. And you start seeing it for what it actually is, a fiercely loyal protector that is just working with incredibly outdated maps. It is trying so hard to keep you safe from a danger that is no longer there.
The shame dissipates. It doesn't mean the pain is gone, but the shame, that heavy, suffocating layer, dissipates when you realize your body has been working overtime for years to keep you alive. It is exhausted, but it is brilliant.
So let's go back to the bathroom floor. The cold tiles, the roaring in your ears, the text message on the screen. Maybe right now the shaking has stopped. The wave has crested, it crashed over you, and now the water is starting to pull back. We know, and you know, that nothing is magically fixed. There is no switch to flip that makes the history disappear. We are not offering you a toxic positivity Band-Aid. The road of healing is long, and it is non-linear.
But as you sit there on the floor, breathing a little easier now, the shame is dissipating because you are understanding the deep neurobiological mechanics of your own survival. You're no longer alone in that scummy fish tank because you finally know what the water is made of. You know the glass is there. You are definitively not broken. You are a brilliantly designed organism that was trying with absolutely everything it had to protect you.
And as you finally take a deep breath and you brace your hands on the tiles and you stand up, we want to leave you with one quiet, lingering question to carry with you today. A thought drawn directly from the deepest, most empathetic parts of this research. We want you to just sit with this. If your body has been keeping count, it's every single time someone didn't show up for you. If it has been fiercely, loyally holding on to that heavy suitcase of grief for all these years just to protect you, what would it mean to finally let it put that ledger down?
Thanks for staying all the way to the end. I know this wasn't the lightest topic, so it really means something that you sat with it. If this episode gave you even one moment of clarity or made you see your patterns a little differently, that's exactly why Girls Brain exists. And if you want more of these deeper, honest conversations around psychology, attachment, and the things we don't usually say out loud, you can subscribe to Girls Brain so you don't miss what's coming next. I'll see you in the next episode.